Okay? Alright. So yes, there's three aims to today's lesson. One is to understand what's happening in China, right? It's important to try to understand how high-tech machinery, how the business operates, and I'll talk a little bit about that, semiconductors and things like that. Secondly, to learn about Eastern culture, right? So I think a couple of times people, it mentioned copying in the article. I think that it's important to understand the cultural aspect of copying. And finally, to consider the strategy of copying. Okay, so this is to do with IP law and patents and things like that. Okay, so but before I go into the material, I just want to have a quick brainstorming session. What is your image of Made in China right now in 2017? Made in China, 2017. What's your image of Chinese product?
The quality is not high or not assured.
Low quality and assurance. Okay. Any other kind of thoughts on Chinese products today?
They're cheap.
Cheap. Cheap as chips. Yeah.
Copying.
Copied. So, yeah. Okay. Any other?
The quality is getting better now because sometimes we saw some like refrigerators or microwave oven. We see the Chinese products at the electric shop, and they are very cheap and they are not so bad. So I'd like to buy some.
Good. Any others?
Yeah, I think quality is good, but they don't have high quality goods. I mean,
High-tech goods.
high-tech or expensive.
No luxury goods.
Yeah.
Okay. So, no luxury. Okay. Noma-san, do you think?
Yeah, let me introduce my experience. I have invested in solar generator, solar panel.
Yes.
And before that, I made research, and I contacted the expert who examined the quality of the solar panel about 4 years ago. Even at the time, the production of the solar panel by Chinese companies was 10 times as many as those of Japan. And the researcher said that because they produce massively, they can improve the production process very quickly. So Japanese people believe that solar panel are made by Japanese companies better than Chinese. But the researcher, they believe that the Chinese solar panel quality is much better because they produce massively and cheaply, and process is much better.
Yes, that's called economies of scale. mass manufacturing?
Actually, the solar panel made by Japanese company, they only sold only by Japanese. No foreign by Japanese panel.
They don't want it.
No, nobody.
It's too expensive.
Too expensive, yeah.
Yeah. So economies of scale is when a company buys in bulk, right? So if the more money you have, the cheaper you can get it, right? So if you have a lot of money and a lot of land and a lot of people, then you can make bigger factories, and the production process is much more efficient, and your purchasing is more efficient. So Chinese goods enjoy economies of scale because they have just so many resources.
Not only price, but also quality.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Any others? Any other images? Do you think low tech is one? Low tech? Or is that a little bit old in the thinking? Because until recently, I used to associate Chinese goods with toys, pens, like low-tech things, very easy to assemble, right? But I think recently we're seeing increasingly more high-tech products coming onto the market from China. But this low-tech thing is probably a little bit dated or old image, right? Yes. Now, what's your image of Japanese products made in Japan? MIJ 2017. Masaya-san?
Good quality but expensive.
Expensive? High quality? Right?
Yes.
Any other images of made in Japan? Nihon said. What is it?
It's Chinese, but usually there is a strict law or examination to pass.
So good quality control?
Yeah, so it sounds safe.
Safe. Okay. Any other?
Many function.
Many function? Takino. Okay.
Sometimes too much. Takino.
For example, what?
For example, like that, recorder, DVD recorder.
Yes.
PC.
Okay. Would you say that made in Japan products are kind of improvements on old technology? For example, cameras, right? They used to make cameras in the West, in America and in Germany, but now almost all the cameras are Japanese, right? The brands, Canon, Nikon, Sony. So I would say that improvements on old products is one of them. Now, this is a question. Japanese products, were they always like this? Or was there a time when Japanese products were not so high quality or so reliable? Was that?
I have all the time Japanese product is not good.
Yeah, in the past. Yeah.
Past.
Right. So, what in the past they used to made in Japan was actually a very bad brand, right? Like people used to make fun of Japanese products because they would break and things like that, but they improved. Now, so I think that what China is trying to do right now is they're trying to move up and try to copy what's happening in Japan or what happened to Japan, right? To try to make the products better, more expensive, so they can capture the high end of the value chain. Here, this is kind of a very crude example of a value chain, right? So, for example, if you think about iPhones, right? It's designed in Cupertino, California, and then the raw materials are sourced, right? The components that are going to be used inside the iPhone, and then the product will be developed, and then assembled, and then distributed to the end customer. So, right now, what's happening is, I think China is mainly operating in this area of the market, right? Chinese factories. Well, not distribution so much. And also development. But as we know, a company like Apple really makes its money on the design, right? Designing the processor, designing the software and so forth. This is where the money and the power lies, in the design. So what China wants to do, they want to move up the value chain, is basically what Made in China 2025 is about. Okay, so let me get into the material. Welcome, Junko-san.
Thank you.
Welcome back, rather.
Thank you very much.
Okay, line 5. I have often jested that the main difference between the United States and China is not that one is capitalist and the other communist. Rather, it is that one is run by lawyers and the other by engineers. As long as China is governed by engineers, I reckon this China's new transformation will shock, intimidate, and challenge us for decades to come. So on line 8, it says, I reckon China's new transformation, right? So this is the new transformation of moving towards a more Japanese model of moving up the value chain. But what's the old transformation then? Where did China come from to get to where it is right now? I think it's useful to look at the history of what happened. What was China before all the factories? Noma-san?
What do you mean? How many years ago? 20 years ago?
Anything up to you? How did it transform?
China?
Yes.
Before, I think maybe 1940 or something. It was a dynasty, Qin dynasty, and after that there was a revolution, and ROC, Republic of China was formed, and then communist and communism formed, and then communism was forced out to Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
And there was mainland China, it was a communist country, and there was a Great Cultural Revolution in the late 1960s, and for first half of the 1970s. And then after that, Deng Xiaoping took power, and he changed the communists to sort of they kept the communist form, but they allow private industry, and after that, China becoming started to grow very, very rapidly, and now it's the second largest economy in the world, and manufacturing center of the world now.
Yes. So you mentioned 1970s, first half 1970s. What was the country like in terms of economy before 1970?
Communist, and they produce everything, farming and factory, together in something like cooperative system.
Yes. Would you say that it was more agrarian or more agricultural? But then after 1970, with Deng, you say, he since then it's been rapidly industrializing. And what has changed? You think? Do you think that people moved from the villages to the coastal manufacturing areas?
Oh, that's the result. The Deng reform allowed the people to establish private factories.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So before 1970, a lot of people were living in the villages, right, in the interior. But then with the private industries and the new emphasis on business and commerce, and the most important thing, I think, is riding on the tailwind of globalization, right? China became the factory of the world, and a lot of people moved to the east coast, the coastline, as migrant workers. What do you call it? Migrant workers in Japanese. Yimin Norodosha. Right. So the country went a real transformation, I think, in the 1970s and then onwards. Now this is the new transformation. They're trying to move to a much more higher value-added economy. So the important thing, I think, is to remember is the globalization, and in the 1970s it started really kind of kicking into gear. Line 10. Ask people in the US or Europe about Chinese technology, and most will still cast a dismissive smile and say China remains home of the cheap and cheerful copycat stuff that fills Walmart shelves. The dangerous naivety of this view was brought home forcefully at our APEC Business Advisory Council meetings last year. The first in San Francisco and the second in Shenzhen. The first thing we noticed was that our internet worked noticeably faster in Shenzhen than around San Francisco. The second was that our Chinese colleagues were paying for everything via Alipay on their smartphones. So I think, personally, these two things about the internet being very fast and people paying for things on their mobiles are really, really important. Do you know why? Why do you think it's important that people pay on their mobiles? This is about fintech. And I think it connects very well with Made in China 2025. Anybody? Shintaro-san?
Why?
Yeah, why is internet and e-payment culture very important?
In China.
Yeah, to Made in China 2025.
Because everything will be connected with internet, on every machine or every computer, IoT.
Yes.
So first, that's why internet is important, and e-payment. It is easy to pay everything with internet without payment method. So it's like so IoT needs e-payment. That's why internet and e-payment is important for China 2025.
Yeah, the key word you mentioned is IoT, right? So made in China 2025, in my view, will probably look like smart factories, right? Factories that are pretty much, they don't have many people in, right? So everything will be automatic, robots will be making things. And for that, you need lots of data, right? And the data can only be transferred via the internet. So IoT, this is really key for smart factories that will be a feature of the new Chinese industry. And e-payment, you said it's very important to IoT. Why?
Because e-payment is data based on data, and IoT based on data as well. That's why everything based on data.
Data about what? Data about?
Data about everything.
So things like purchasing, right? Purchasing behavior. So if I buy, for example, if I buy something on my mobile, that data is in real time is transmitted to the factories, and it starts to input my purchasing behavior into the algorithms. For example, I used to drink coffee. I stopped like 2 weeks ago. This is not good data, but I would reliably buy coffee every week, right? But if I was paying on my mobile, then the factory would know that Julian needs his coffee every week, and it would need to be roasted, right? But if it's done manually, it's not productive. It's better if it's done automatically. It's much more, it captures more value. And so that kind of data improves the vendor's stock ratio, right? How much stock that they hold.
Marketing. Good for marketing.
Marketing, well, I don't know about marketing, but stock. 在庫, right? So if you buy too much coffee, if you roast too much coffee and it goes bad, then you have to, write that off and throw that coffee away. But if it knows reliably how often I buy, how much I buy, then it can kind of manage stock much more efficiently. So I think e-payments and internet are real key enablers for the new Made in China 2025 smart factories. I'm giving you an example of my coffee purchasing behavior, but it doesn't have to end with coffees. It could be any kind of product. In addition, it gives you more accountability, right? Because if there's less cash, paper cash in the economy, tax collection can be made much more transparent. I think India did something very recently in November, where they basically got rid of the 2 higher denomination bills and then tried to force everyone to use e-payments. So they tried to get rid of corruption, basically, that way. Any other kind of benefits to e-payment or important things we should mention? Because Japan, everyone pays by cash mostly, right? Because people still look at me funny if I buy an onigiri at 7-Eleven. I pay with my credit card. They ask, why do you pay with your credit card? But everybody pays with cash. But what's better about paying on your mobile? Kawai-san?
You don't have to carry the money.
It's convenient, right? Bendy. It's more speedy. And Shintaro-san, you mentioned data, right? So the data that you generate can then be used to make other financial products, like loans, customized loans, right? So there's more customized financial products.
I heard if real money will disappear, central bank is easy to manipulate economy. So push money directly to each person.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this is just idea, but. I doubt Chinese government is thinking about that kind of thing.
Well, getting rid of all the money.
Yeah.
What do you think, Nomo-san?
I didn't really
Demonetization. Demonetization stuff.
it's very difficult, how can I say? Now, something like demonetization, economic demonetization, the money go out of the country and in the country without the, can I say, very easy, low cost. So in a sense, it's more difficult for central bank to control the amount of currency inside the country.
So capital control is more difficult with demonetization, I think.
In a sense, yes.
Okay. But I think it's also better it improves tax collection for the government, right? Collecting taxes, making sure everybody pays their VAT, and making sure they know how much everybody earns so that they pay the right income tax. So yes, China is changing very rapidly right now, but I think the important thing to remember is the IoT. This is really the key thing about the new manufacturing economy of China. Everything should be done in a robotic fashion with as much automation as possible. Okay, let's move on. Line 18. In awe of the smart technologies on display at PayPal, Google and Dolby Sound Studios, we were at PayPal, Google and Dolby Sound Studios, we were blown away by Huawei, where 40% of its 170,000 staff are working on pure research, and the foundations are being laid for rollout of 5G across the whole of China by 2020. Okay, so 5G. Why is 5G important? Jimbo-san.
What is 5G?
5G is the next generation from 4G. 4G is the internet that you have on your phone.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
So you have 3G, 4G. Why is 5G important?
I have no idea.
That's fine. Masato? Anybody?
IoT.
Yes, IoT. So IoT, you need more data, right? The amount of packets that is sent is going to be much, much more because there's more devices connected to the internet. Some people they'll say they're saying that there's going to be 60 billion devices. I think how many is that? 1 billion is 10億. So 60. 660 devices connected to the internet. So that's a massive amount of data. So you need something like 5G infrastructure to transfer that data across the network so that the people who need that data to manage their production will have it. What else do you need for IoT besides good internet? Ayako-san.
Do you mean what is the benefit of IoT?
No, what do you need for IoT? IoTに必要なの. You need internet, right? Good internet.
Needs the engineers to control it.
Okay. In maintenance.
Maintenance for maintenance.
Sure.
And development.
Okay. What else? Junko-san?
Something against the virus.
Cybersecurity, yes, of course. You need good security for the devices.
Glass fiber.
Yes, you need fiber, the infrastructure. And
Or money to maintain it.
money?
Money to.
Yes, it's going to require lots of capital. Sure. I think you also need IC chips, right? For the sensors, right? Because IoT is all about detecting what's happening at any given time on any of the devices. So if you think about cars, right? The new cars and Teslas, they need lots of sensors to collect data, right? And that data needs to be sent to the factories for IoT. So naturally, it's the way you know that the IoT is coming is semiconductor prices are going up, right? And lots of the factories are now just being built in China, and China is becoming basically the center of semiconductor industries, and this is one of the areas where Made in China 2025 is really focused on semiconductors. There's many other industries that they're looking at, like automobiles, aviation, biomedicine as well, but semiconductors is a huge, huge part of the Made in China 2025 strategy. Yeah, so the infrastructure is important, but also the material component of Made in China 2025 is important. And what we should know is that they're already building these parks, and it's already operational, and they're making lots of factories and foundries to create the IC chips that you need for the IoT devices. Okay, let's move on. Line 22. Hardly a week goes by without fresh reminders of extraordinary technological developments occurring on the mainland, many unique to China. Take the bike-sharing boom that has gripped Shanghai and other mainland cities over the past year. Many cities worldwide have bike-sharing operations, but none like those offered by Mobike and Ofo in Shanghai. Find your brightly colored bike open the Mobike app on your phone, scan the QR code on the bike, and you are away. Alipay charges you a security deposit, and user charges of 1 to 2 renminbi an hour. The bikes are GPS tracked. This e-payment revolution has left the rest of the world in the dust. China's digital payments market today is 50 times larger than that in the US. More seriously, look at the 500-meter wide radio telescope in Guizhou province that has joined the global search for extraterrestrial life, or the Sunway Taihu Light supercomputer, which is by far the fastest in the world, or lithium battery development, or 3D printed blood vessels made from stem cells. The list goes on. So the author included these kind of innovative developments in China. But why though? Why is this news? Why is this in the article, do you think? We're talking about factories here, right? But then the author is talking about ET, or extraterrestrial life, supercomputers, 3D printing. Why is this news?
Because we thought that China didn't have technology, they just copied the products. But it shows that they have a very new technology, and also they have the power to develop it.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. So we used to associate China, well, I think a lot of people still associate China with copying, right? Copying everything. So I think now I want to kind of have a debate or discussion about copying, right? Is copying wrong? Very fundamental, simple question. Marcel-san.
I think the first step for copying, I wouldn't say it's not bad, but just selling the copycat is bad. I think Japan also, before we copied products from foreign countries, but developed ourselves, then made it our own products, then improved. That process is very important, I think.
So you good or bad? Or
just copying is bad, but the very first step, copy,
yes.
and make it develop themselves is acceptable, I think.
Okay. I see. Copying, but improving it is okay. I see. Anybody else? Anybody think copying is bad?
It would be okay if they pay for it.
So, 무단 copy.
Pattern or something.
Would you say myself?
Pattern?
Pattern.
Pattern, how do you say?
Oh, patents.
Patents.
Yeah. Patents. Intellectual property. Infringement is good or bad?
I mean, Juko-san mean that if
I was.
Oh, I was
Yes.
Pay for patent.
Yes.
Keep the promise. The countries or companies keep moral they need.
I see. Okay. How about you, Kori-san? What do you think about copying?
As for myself, I have copied the CDs
Oh.
that I borrowed from library or CD shop.
Congratulations.
So sometimes people copy for themselves, but
for private use, copying is okay, but for commercial use, it's no good. It's fine. So no judgment here.
I think
Yes.
the meaning of copying is changing. Before, now we can use a 3D printer, for example. So everything, if we copy some data from other country, we can make perfectly same goods or same products. So now that's why we are now strict for copying. Last week we saw North Korean's missiles picture, and I heard they copied from Russia. And before, for example, when World War II, copying list weapons is it's like a white paper and design or yes, we copied many weapons from many Western countries, but now it is quite easy, more easy, and that's why every country is now strict for copying. Situation changed now.
I see. So you think with more, what changed then? The situation changed?
Situation.
You mean globalization or?
Yeah, globalization. So, yeah.
Okay, so globalization has made IP more important, you think?
Yeah, right.
Okay. How about you, Junko-san? Copying.
I think technique of copy is important to make us improve the life, and we can't stop it anyways. So I think it's okay, but the selling products as the original one, even it's copy, like the brand bags or clothes like that, I don't think it's a good idea. But technology are important.
Important to copy technology, but not brands. You think?
Like pretending the original product is not acceptable.
Okay, so
Just idea or
dishonest copying is not good. But if you copy something and then change the name, that's okay.
Yeah.
I see. And Noma-san, do you have any strong thoughts, feelings about copying?
Generally, it's okay, but for new innovation or new design, if the patent or the right must be protected, otherwise there will be less innovation or new products. So for new products or new design, they must be protected to enhance innovation.
Okay, so you think copying is bad for innovation?
They must be paid, protected.
Sorry?
There must be the copy must be new innovation or new design must be protected, patent or something.
I see. Okay. I mean, me personally, I think there's kind of two types of copying. There's copying because there's no other better way, right? Like if you're going to make a high-tech component, you have to kind of, if you're not going to copy, you have to license. But it's much better to copy, right? And then there's the other type of copying as a shortcut. Right? I think there's two types of copying. I think copying is rational. It's I think pretty much everyone said if it makes sense to copy technology because somebody has done it before, the risk is low, the rewards are known. Right? You already know how much money you can make by copying something. So it's almost foolish not to copy, right? On the other hand, if research is very high cost, right, and very labor intensive. You have to spend lots of time, and you don't know if the rewards are there. You don't know if you will make money, and you don't know if somebody will copy you. So it's almost like a mug's game. And then, you mentioned IP, intellectual property. This is a very difficult question, I think. In terms of globalization, right? If you're going to build something, you have to try to build it in a country where it's cheap to build. So, if you take the case of China, a lot of companies, they want to sell their products in China, right? That's basically called market access to the market. But then if you want to also build products in China, then you have to risk that there will be you have a risk that there will be a technology transfer, and that some local competitor will basically copy your products, and then take your basically take your idea and sell it in that market. So it becomes a very, very I don't know. It's a big dilemma, I think, for a lot of companies. They need to grow. They need to find new markets, and then if they go to China, that's where all the customers are in the world. And then they've set up their factory there, and it's not so hard to reverse engineer, which is kind of gyaksan, reverse engineer, and then make the product from scratch. So it's a very tough dilemma, I think. Okay, just another question. Do you think there's a cultural element to the copying mentality? Do you think the attitude to copying is different between West and East? Masaya-san.
I think the way of thinking moral is different as Western and Asian, and they don't think copying is a bad thing.
Who?
The Asian people, not only China, the East, West Asia.
Confucian
Right.
cultures, yeah.
I think it comes from, I don't know, religion, or I don't know the basic ideas. One, how to say, they have an idea for sharing. So I think if I have something, it's yours as well. I think that's a basic idea of them. And copying is taking, they don't think it's steal or something, just to share or borrow what they think. So I think they industrialize. I mean, moral is not following the industry in China. I saw the news of there's a mobile, the rental bike, bike sharing.
Yes.
I think it's getting popular, but the moral, they just, how to say, left the vehicles not supposed to be there, or broken the bike or something like that. The industry is very high-tech, becoming high-tech, but the moral ideas are not following.
Okay. So there's a
Still gap between.
so the culture of the people is not following the kind of IP laws and
Yet.
regulations. You think?
Yet.
Okay. Does anybody else have any kind of input on the kind of cultural question? Yes.
I don't know the difference between Western and Asian cultures, but I would say the society becomes mature, the attitude of people change. I mean, in Japan, people used to like to buy some copy things. I mean, the shortcut copy products you mentioned. I mean, fake brand bag or watches. They would like to buy such things in the past in Japan, but nowadays, not so many people like to buy them. So people changes. So the China used to produce a lot of copy things, but the culture becomes mature. People don't want to buy them.
So the nisemono thing is
No.
becomes unattractive. You think? Very interesting. Anybody else? Copying culture? No, sorry.
I don't know. I don't know the difference between West and East. As for products.
But what about intellectual skills and so forth?
I don't know. But something like I mean, legal system or society. Japanese or Oriental people tend to follow the whole style. Western people they try to change more. But for product maybe no, it's about the same.
Yeah. I think there definitely is a cultural difference when it comes to copying. If you think about education, right, the way people are brought up and what they are taught, in the East, well, I know in Japan at least, I understand it's the same in China, people learn how to write by copying the kanji, right? Copy it 10 times and then your body memorizes it. And to pass the tests, you have to kind of copy, not copy the person next to you, but to try to kind of just absorb the information, kind of copy it to your head, and kind of paste it into the test, right, to memorize. But if you look at the West, education is not so much like that. Creativity and kind of original thinking is what is kind of valued much more highly than just memorizing and copying what you saw or what you read onto the paper. So I think there's kind of different attitudes towards copying. In the West, copying is seen as, I think, is seen as a little, very dirty and kind of like almost like cheating. But you know, I read a very prominent professor of law. I read his article, and he said that in China, it used to be a kind of it used to be a collectivist society where people would, group together and form communities, and it was actually very dirty. It was seen as very dirty and anti-community for one person to kind of create something like maybe art and then try to sell it, because that would make him kind of a shoni, right? Which is kind of it was seen as kind of low class. So somebody trying to take money from the community for himself is kind of anti-community, which is completely different from the Western way of thinking, I think. So yes, I think there's definitely some cultural differences to copying, and there is certainly a Western aversion to copying. Like Western people don't really highly rate copying, but maybe in the East it's seen as much more normal. I think it's probably seen as a good thing as well, because it shows that if you copy somebody, it shows that you're respecting them. I remember when I used to work in sushi, right, and I used to have senpai, and I asked them, can you show me how to do something, because I can do that and it help the company. But they were like, no, you can't, waza, right? Because I think they were probably thinking that I need to kind of learn it for myself, right? So they were much more guarded with their secrets, which is, for me, I didn't really understand it, because those skills should be kind of handed down to me automatically to improve the company's performance, but the craftsmen wanted to protect their intellectual property, right? So it was, for me, it was very strange. I didn't really understand it, but there's definitely some differences towards the perception of copying on a cultural level, I think. Okay, let's move on. Line 37. I even noticed this recently when a tech publication compared the specs of the pride of America's drone market, the GoPro Karma, with the Mavic Pro drone made by DJI in the Pearl River Delta. By every measure, the Mavic was superior. It flew faster, it flew twice as high, weighed 25% less, could fly 30% longer time, and cost $750 compared with GoPro's $800. This extraordinary transition from cheap and cheerful to world-matching high-tech is not an accident, and in many governments around the world it is triggering alarm and protest. Back in the early noughties, China's engineers, or rather party cadres, realized that as manufacturer to the world, its companies were playing a mug's game. They had captured the low-cost assembly parts of the global supply chains of companies worldwide, but this kept their millions of migrant workers in virtual poverty, while they were importing high value-adding components from manufacturers in the US, Japan, Germany, and Korea. These engineers worked out that if they were ever going to build a middle-class consumer economy, China's workers would need to earn much higher wages, which meant higher productivity, and the technological capacity to make the high value-adding sophisticated components inside China. From this, the Made in China 2025 scheme was conceived, attracting billions of dollars into research at home and the acquisition of foreign companies and foreign talent wherever possible. So here they talk about higher productivity. And they say that moving up the value chain will improve productivity. How will moving up the value chain improve productivity, do you think? How does it work, this productivity thing? Shintaro-san?
Value chain? Can you tell me once more?
Yeah, how does moving up the value chain improve the productivity of the country? Productivity is something. Oh, yes, yes, productivity says something. How is productivity usually measured?
Production and cost.
Production cost. So you have On one side you have cost,
Yes.
and then you have, well, the product.
Yes.
So usually you would look at this as kind of labor
Yes.
and capital,
Yeah.
and then you look at the GDP. So there's many ways of calculating productivity, but basically it's easier to think of it as kind of input, what you put in, and then what you get out. So naturally, you want to reduce the number of inputs and then maximize the output, right?
Yes.
So easy way of doing that is to try to cut labor and get rid of people, because that's a big cost. And then another way of doing it is to try to make more high value added activities. So it makes sense, doesn't it, to move up the value chain, because if you're doing more things like designing, right, designing products yourselves, right, you're moving up the value chain, you're capturing more money out of the kind of the end product. At the same time, if you automate everything and make smart factories, then you know you don't need so many people, you don't need to pay so much people in labor. Of course, the capital outlay would be much higher initially, but that will kind of pay itself off afterwards. So this is really the kind of what China is trying to do, is to improve the productivity. If you think about productivity, the US, Germany, and other Western countries, as well as Japan, are very high productivity nations with very good standards of living. But China is still very, very low in terms of productivity because it has so many people. So it makes sense for Made in China 2025 to aim to move up the value chain and then therefore become a more productive nation. Okay, let's move on. Within 2 years, high-tech experts, particularly in the US, were pressing panic buttons. Robert Atkinson, president of the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, told the US Congress in January that China had plunged into an aggressive by hook or by crook strategy that involves serially manipulating the marketplace and stealing and coercing transfer of American know-how. Right, so this guy is using very aggressive language, right? Using stealing and coercing when talking about China. Line 63. In truth, China's government was not doing anything unique or even novel. The Made in China 2025 initiative was based on Germany's Industry 4.0 blueprint for technology development. So Industry 4.0 is basically like Made in China 2025, where they also want to make smart factories and connect everything using IoT. What is awesome is the speed and effectiveness with which they have built this technology self-reliance initiative from scratch. A total of 19 data labs have been established in universities across the country. STEM education is being prioritized countrywide. A Qianren Jiuhua 1,000 talent scheme is trawling the world to attract brilliant scientists. And for a US official who has for decades had first-hand experience of how US government-funded defense industry research has been carefully used to fuel the US's technology leadership worldwide, complaints about Chinese government support for high-tech research sounds a tad hypocritical. But Mr. Atkinson is right to be unnerved and wary of the massive global implications of what is now occurring across the mainland. From a horse and cart economy just 3 decades ago, China is not only being transformed, its lack of legacy technology infrastructure and a ruthlessly hyper-competitive private sector are leapfrogging in many ways most of the rest of the world can barely imagine. In China's Huawei in 2015 became the world's biggest issuer of new international patents. So, okay, why is it important for a big tech firm like Huawei to issue so many patents, do you think? Why are they churning out so many patents? Obviously, not all of them are going to become products, are they? But why? Why is it so important to issue patents? Noma-san?
To protect the innovation.
Okay. Protect innovation.
Benchmark the country is making new technology.
Protecting innovation and you say benchmark?
Benchmark or
What do you mean by a benchmark?
The proof that in one country if there's a new patent, it proves that in the country there's more innovation.
To show the world that you're innovative. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay. You mean as a symbolism?
Yeah.
Okay. Aigo-san.
Yes, they also can earn money by their patents.
How?
They used to use other countries' technology without asking, but now they have many patents, so other companies, when other companies want to use them, they should pay for it.
Okay. For licensing?
Licenses, yes.
Okay. That's a very interesting angle. Have you ever heard of patent trolls?
Trolls?
Yes. Patent trolls.
What is it?
It's a very interesting business model. So, you know, in America, America has the most lawyers in the world, right? That means there's lots of money for lawyers. Now, patent trolls are companies whose business model is to buy patents from anywhere, right? And then what they will do is they will just sit on the patents. They won't make anything. It's called this type of company is called a non-performing entity. It means it doesn't do anything. It just sits on the patent. And how they make money is when a company like Samsung comes out with a product, a high-tech product, the patent troll, if it has a patent which they think is being used in that Samsung product, will then launch legal attacks on Samsung. So basically this company doesn't produce anything, right? It doesn't add anything to the economy. But when somebody innovates, or somebody makes technology for the market, they will just kind of sue that company. That's a patent troll. It's a very interesting business model, because the people who make the most money out of it will be the lawyers, right? Not necessarily the innovators. So yes, that's
what I mean is not like that.
Yes.
I mean, the technology is always being developed in other ways. So when people want to develop something, they should use the old technology, and in that case, they should pay for it.
Yes. Okay, so that's the reason why Huawei is making so many patents.
Yes.
Okay. Any other reasons why it's important to issue so many patents? Shintaro-san.
It's difficult to say in English.
You can say it in Japanese, it's okay. It's okay. Yes. In Japanese.
In Japanese.
日本語でどう？
あれですよね。なぜパテントをこれだけ多く中国で取られてるかっていうことですよね。
中国で、まあ、ファーウェイみたいなでかい技術系の会社がこれだけ多くのパテントをイシューしてるのはなんで大事なんですか？
I doubt Chinese patent system and international patent system is different.
Yes.
And I think that's why they have many patents in China.
No, there's an international authority for patents as well. I think it's the World WIPO, I think. Yes. But the law, the kind of laws are different in the country, in each country, but there is a kind of global standard for patents. なんだろう、登録はなんか世界統一でしてるみたいですけど、法律、それに関する法律は各国で違ったりする。
I think they understand patent is more important in our world because their future design depends on the information or copyright or data, or so they focus on the information, not just product. So that's why they are focusing on to get many patents.
Yeah. Okay. So if you think about the product, right? If you think about something like semiconductors or IC chips, you have a chip, right? But a chip is a very, very complex item, right? If you think about a chip, so many things go into it, right? Maybe this, you cannot design everything from scratch, right? So if you think about this as an IC chip, right? Maybe the technology for this part of the IC chip, right, would be owned by one company, and this chunk, this part of the chip would be owned by another, and then so on, right? But this is called a complex product. If you think about other more simple products, right? Say maybe something more like a shampoo or something, right? Then you don't really need so many different technologies to produce that, right? But for IC chip, it's so complex and so many different companies holding different patents. It makes strategic sense to issue many, many patents to do with semiconductor technology, because then what happens is that when you're trying to build a chip, right, you have to make a factory. It costs a lot of money, right? And then if you discover that, oh, somebody has already got a patent for one of the chips that I'm designing, that I made right now, they can sue us, right? Then you're in trouble. But if you have lots of patents for other things, then you can basically negotiate. Oh, I will let you use my patents if you let me use yours, right? So it's part of a kind of strategy for these companies to try to issue many, many patents to do with technology, complex products, as much as possible, to try to keep the money out of the pockets of the lawyers, right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, it's very complex, but it makes sense, right? You think about Apple, right? They use Samsung chips in their products, but if they're just fighting each other completely until each other if they're just completely fighting, they're not going to make money, either of them. So for them to both try to create products and then bring it to the market, they have to work together. And the way that they work together is by negotiating, and it improves your negotiating position if you have more relevant patents. So I think that's why Huawei, they see that this is necessary to the business model, right? To issue many, many patents. So then it's very difficult to, when you think about different countries having different IP laws, right? So in America we have the most lawyers in the world because the IP law is very strict. But in other countries, the IP law is not so strict. In China, for instance. What does that mean for companies in general, tech businesses? What do you think? Jinko-san. Sorry, it's a very difficult, very complex discussion. Sorry. If America has very, very strict controls on IP and many lawyers, but in China the laws are not so strict and not many lawyers, how does that affect the behavior of a company that innovates and wants to bring new markets, bring new products to the market?
Well, I think it's easier to work in China more than US because they don't have to worry about being sued.
Yeah. So it's interesting because Noma-san, you said that protecting innovation is very important, right? But when protection becomes more important than actual innovation, and lawyers are taking all the money that you're making, then it's almost like you're killing innovation itself. Do you think so? Yes.
Oh yeah. Yes. What's your question again?
You said protecting innovation is very important, but too much protection means that too much of the money that you earn is going to patent lawyers, right? Because you have to pay them to kind of protect your ideas, and then they're protecting other people's ideas, and then maybe if you release a product which has a component or feature which is somebody else's patent, you're going to get sued.
Not only the lawyer, but the competitor has to pay, the follower has to pay a lot of money.
Sorry?
The innovator get a lot of money if the high protection, and the follower has to pay.
The copier, the guy who infringed it. Yes, yes. So, but no. So much of the value is being taken out of the actual innovation is being put into lawyers because on legal fees. Do you think that's
Actually, what can I say? To file IP.
お知らせします。まもなくご利用時間が終了となります。現状付近。
yes?
To submit file patent. It's not too expensive. For the suit, the lawsuit is expensive.
Yes. And to get advice from lawyers is very expensive as well.
In the lawsuit, but just filing it's not too expensive.
Right. So I think there's multiple faces to this problem: copying, IP, and protecting it. I think these are kind of things that we need to kind of think about in terms of what the future is going to look like. Is the market in China much more attractive? You know, because it has less regulation. Maybe if too much regulation is very, you know, it's sometimes it's too difficult for businesses. But you know, for example, if a private company is doing research and development, I mean, it's a big cost. But if a government is sponsoring it, like in China, then it may make more sense to do it. So, and I think this is a very complex issue, but it's worth thinking about and considering what China is going to look like in the next 10 years in terms of its tech strategy. So I hope that you enjoyed it today. Thank you very much. ありがとうございました. Thank you very much. Yes, next lesson will be on the 16th of June, which is a Friday. In the middle of June. It will be at Roppongi Jome, at DMM office. I have a smaller room this time, Nijunin Bear. If you can come down, it would be great. The topic will be, it will be about gaijins, gaijins living in Japan and what they don't understand about Japan. Okay, so it should be a fun lesson. Thank you very much. ありがとうございました。